of the St. George's Baptist Church. 2 weeks ago, the first lecture was held titled Commercial Investment and Money Management, and that was presented by Mr. Richard Duncan, OBE. This afternoon, the second lecture will be presented by Mrs. Matonia Monroe. And the lecture this afternoon is on relationship and finance. I am Cicely Gabriel, and I am delighted to be your chairperson this afternoon. At this point, we are going to get straight into this afternoon session, and I will now call on Pastor Stanford Simon to bring us some welcome remarks and to do an opening prayer.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening to all of you. I invite you to stand with me as we pray and thank God for the opportunity. Father, we thank you for who you are, your goodness, your mercy, your provision. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to serve. And God, when you think about relationships and how you have blessed God relationships, and in that, the development of family, and pulling together ourselves, our finances, and managing that. We thank you for Sister Matonia Monroe, as she would share with us this evening. Open our hearts to receive, God, what she would say, but more to use what we, God, will learn this evening to better empower our lives and our family, our businesses, and God, our marriages and relationships. Bless us, we pray, in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Please be seated. Good evening for each of you that are here, and for those of you who are viewing online. It is a wonderful opportunity to have you here as we continue on these series of lectures. I want to thank you for coming and for being here. As the St. George's Baptist Church continue on this journey, celebrating 50 years. We started 1974, the 5th of August. This church started because a man killed a woman. A man killed a man, for his woman, and ended up in prison. What they call jealous rage out of relationship. He killed a man because my man take you one from him. So he ended up in prison, and there he heard the gospel. He gave his life to Christ. His name was Leon Edwards. In giving his life to Christ, he began to evangelize as he heard the word of God. He invited Southern Baptists. It took 2 years to come. By the time they arrived, half of the prison was evangelized, including some of the wardens. And on the 5th of August, 1974, Tyrrell Street, the first service was held. 98% of the worshipers were prisoners. The musicians were prisoners. The worship leader were prisoners. Only the preacher and a few people in the congregants was not prisoner. That's how St. George's Baptist Church started. And so, as we think about celebrating our 50 years, we think about the relationships that have been built, the lives that we have touched over the past 50 years. And for us, we want to be the channel God chooses to fulfill the needs of humanity, that which our purpose. Empowering people to enjoy prosperity and fulfillment in life is necessary, our mission. And there, for us, building communities would become the model for winning people to Christ, our vision. As a church, we want to ensure that you succeed. We want to ensure that you be a better person, have better relationships. And so the church is not only, we believe, of helping people to get to heaven, but how do you live here on earth? And these series of lectures, the first was thinking about finances, the managing and investment and generational wealth, delivered by Mr. Richard Duncan. Great, OBE, was a great presentation. And today we have Sister Matonia Monroe that would share with you some information about relationship and finance. I also want to look beyond that. On the 6th, we have of July, we have the persons coming from our company coming from Trinidad. We have TechQ Credit Union, and we have Guardian Group, and they're dealing with technology and AI from 1 to 5 p.m., and that is for businesses and persons who are businesses. And then on the 13th of July, we must look at the in-depth part of the church play, Church and Politics. That in itself, thinking, and we have a panelist, or Dr. Wendy Grenade that would be leading that. We have the Honorable Lacrette, Jonathan Lacrette, which is the Minister of Health. We have Franca Bonadine, who is Minister. She was Minister of Education. And we have Pastor Gerard King Douglas. And Dr. Wendy Grenade would be the chairperson. So we in ourselves understand what is needed to be done. And today, this is just a journey in that direction. I'm happy you made it here. For those of you online, thank you so much for being a part of this. And we hope as you listen this evening, your life will be blessed, encouraged, and we are thankful for the opportunity to share these words with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Simon. I will now call Ms. Stacia Blake to introduce our speaker for this afternoon, and she will be followed by Mistress Matonia Monroe.
Good evening, everybody. It is my honor to introduce Matonia Monroe this evening. Matonia Monroe is a member here at the St. George's Baptist Church, and I think that because many of us know her, it is easy to forget how much wisdom and talent can reside in somebody that we know. Matonia, I look forward to hearing what you have to say this evening, because after looking at your biography, you are more than qualified to speak this evening. Let me tell you who Matonia is. Matonia Monroe is currently a senior examiner at the Grenada Authority for the Regulation of Financial Institutions, or GARFIN. She has over 16 years of experience in the financial services sector, especially in the credit union cooperative sector, where she has gathered much knowledge in various aspects of finance and accounting, in operations, and in lending. Mrs. Monroe has been afforded the opportunity to participate in several trainings surrounding cooperative principles, but most notably is the designation of Carib DE. Mrs. Monroe is a chartered accountant and is a member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of the Eastern Caribbean Grenada Division. Her areas of specialty are audit and financial management, and she is also the holder of an advanced diploma in accounting and business, along with several certifications, including business analytics. Aside from her academic specialty, she's the owner of a private consulting firm called WizFine, where she provides independent accounting services to a cadre of small and medium-sized entities. Now, over the last 7 years, Mrs. Monroe has carried out several financial presentations like this one across companies and institutions and churches, where she spent much time training and educating the participants. At present, she's currently partnering with the T.A. Marisho Community College to develop a financial literacy curriculum that informs students at the college level about key principles of the finance and entrepreneurship field. It is her belief that the way we see money and business as a people can only meaningfully change if the subject is fully integrated into our education system. The successful implementation of this project will afford her the designation of International Credit Union Development Educator. The highlight of Mrs. Monroe's career is always the transfer of knowledge, and it is her hope that it will make a marked difference in people's lives. I'm confident tonight we will be changed. Can we put our hands together, please, for Mrs. Matonia Monroe?
Thank you, Sister Cecilia, for that wonderful introduction. Pleasant good evening to everyone. It's good to have you here. We are going to get into some interesting discussions this evening. It's a hot topic. It's relationship and finance, and it's very pertinent. We are certainly going to be looking at several types of relationships. I thought it necessary to broaden the scope this afternoon because we have all different types of relationships. I know some people met me and they thought I was just going to address marriages. Of course not. Our society is too filled with different types of relationships to just restrict it there. So we are going to be looking at how do we work together to build a strong foundation. And we're going to be examining several things, but I want to begin by establishing some Key financial principles. I always start my presentations taking from the scripture because that is where I get my wisdom from. And interestingly, some people think that the scripture is just simply a spiritual book. No, it is the book of life. It touches every aspect of our life. And some of the most notable people who have attained significant strides in terms of financial prowess, they practice biblical principles. Some of them just don't know it. So we're going to establish 4 things from the Bible tonight that I'm going to be speaking on tonight. That would be the thread of what we are discussing here in terms of relationship and finance. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. So that is the power of joining forces. We are going to look at that tonight. Happy is the man that finds wisdom and the man that gets understanding. For length of days is in his right hand, and in his left hand riches and honor. That comes from Proverbs 3:14 and 16, which underscores the necessity of wisdom. Wisdom is what leads you to riches. It's not the other way around. It's not hard work. It's not all of these things. Wisdom is what leads you to wealth. Can 2 walk together unless they agree? Amos 3:3. We're going to discuss the importance of agreement that is necessary. Because as we speak about relationship, we need to understand the value of agreement. And finally, which of you intending to build a tower sits not down and first count the cost, whether you have enough to finish? That's coming from Luke 28, and we are going to be discussing the need for planning. So these are the 4 things that is going to be the thread throughout this evening's presentation. What are some of the objectives I hope to attain here this evening? 1, I need to help you to develop effective partnership skills, right? If you are in a relationship, whatever the nature of the relationship, it's important. If you're here, you want to learn about how to become more financially stable, how to become more financially effective as a couple in a business relationship. I want to be able to help you develop effective partnership skills. Secondly, I want to help increase your awareness of key matters that must be considered where joint financial decisions are being made, right? A lot of us lack financial awareness. And sometimes the thing is, when you get into a relationship, finance is a must. It's a must factor. You cannot avoid it. So you're going to be making financial decisions. But if you don't have financial awareness, that's how you're going to end up in some serious consequential issues. So we have to discuss increasing your awareness. I want to also help to develop a better understanding of how to plan financially together, because financial planning is a crucial principle in helping you to be able to make the best possible decisions as you work together to build strong finances. And finally, I want to be able to transform the way you view financial matters. Culturally, and that is a problem that I recognize in Grenada, culturally we have a problem in terms of the way we view finances, and that is what is affecting our ability to be able to experience financial betterment. It's really a cultural problem. So hopefully tonight we're going to see how well I can transform the way, thank you, you view your financial matters in the context of your relationship. Thank you. So the types of relationships that we are going to be looking at this evening, we're going to be looking at marriage and finance. That's a big one. We're also going to be looking at common law union and finance. It's important. A lot of people in Grenada do not have married relationships. They live common law. And so we cannot exempt them. We have to be able to discuss these issues and how that type of relationship filters through finance, or rather how finance filters through that type of relationship. We're also going to look at uncommitted relationship, typical boyfriend, girlfriend, but you're spending money, you're making financial decisions. Yes, we have to deal with that because that also has serious financial implications, and we need to be able to deal with that. And finally, we're going to be looking at business relationships and finance. So 4 important relationships: your marriage and finance, common law union and finance, uncommitted relationship and finance, and business relationship and finance. Let's begin with marriage and finance. What should you do before you say I do? So don't panic. We're going to deal with after you say I do. But there are some critical things that you need to do before you say, I do. The first thing you need to do, you must have a discussion about finance. You can't just simply be discussing how large you want your house to be and how much kids you want to have. You can't just be looking and staring in one another's eyes and talking about how much you love one another. You need to have time. You need to make time. You need to prioritize time to have a serious discussion on finances. You need to look one another in the eye and find out from each other, what is your viewpoint on finances? How do you view finances? I know that finances is a very taboo topic among our people. We tend to feel that we should keep that conversation to ourselves. Now, most of the times we do. The problem is, even if we keep it to ourselves, there are actual consequences because the financial choices that we make, whether we think it's private or not, whether we think we're doing it together or single, it's going to affect the unit. So the first thing you need to do before you say I do, just as much as you need to talk about whether you want kids, if you can have kids, who should be leading the household, finance is a critical component of that relationship. It's going to affect everything that you do. So you need to have that discussion. You need to discuss expectations. You need to discuss roles. You don't want to get married and then suddenly the man feels, I'm supposed to be taking authority over this. And the woman thinks, well, no, I'm supposed to be taking authority over this. The next thing you know, 3 months down the line in a marriage, the first bitter contract is established. And believe me, finance leads into all sorts of other problems. So you don't want to presume that I am going to take the lead role in finance, that my husband is just going to come and drop all of the money, and I'm just going to deal with all of the money. Or that the husband should just expect, without even having a discussion, that you're just going to come, make your money, and drop all of the money there. You cannot depend on assumption. So you must have that discussion before you say I do. That is where you're going to start to understand how people are thinking when it comes to money, how they see money, whether or not it's important, whether or not they think money is something that you should not be too concerned about. If this one is happy-go-lucky, is this one is extremely thrifty? That's a problem there. So if you don't discuss these things and then you find it out after marriage, it's going to create a problem. So the first thing you do before you say I do is assign time to have an honest discussion about finance, expectation, and roles. The second thing is you need to be honest. You have to be open about your financial reality. Now, I don't say this lightly because a lot of people are not going to be open. Let me say this off the bat. Not because I'm saying that you need to be open. I'm trying to encourage you to be open. But if somebody is in financial distress, they're not going to tell the person they're about to get married that the police is about to pick me up because I have a judgment against some loan that I'm not paying. But equally, it is not fair to somebody to enter into a union with you and then suddenly realize you have no money at all. Or that if they don't do something about the fact that you do not have any money, you don't have any available income, because all of your monies are tied up in loans, that something severe is going to happen to your household. What happens when you send your child to school and then you suddenly realize that the man that you've married or the woman that you've married is up to their necks with debt? That is not fair. And many people get into a marriage and then realize the financial circumstances that they are dealing with. That is a serious mistake. So if you're about to get married, you need to have that conversation. And I'm telling you no, Grenadians don't like to have that conversation about finance. It's a very uncanny topic. It's a very taboo topic. So part of my mission is to break that. We have to become more used to having these discussions. It's not a private matter when you're looking to get married. It's a public matter. And if you choose to treat it privately, it's going to have public consequences. So you need to be honest. Don't be secretive. If there is an issue going on, tell the person, hey, this is what is happening, right? This is a situation that I'm faced with. You need to be honest. That is just simply being fair to the person. You need to probe. What do I mean by probe? If you find that the person, whether or not is a man or the woman, they're very secretive, they're very uncomfortable, every time you try to have that little conversation is because they're shutting you down, find ways to probe. If that person is shutting you down constantly every time you try to have a discussion on money, that is a red flag. And a serious red flag as well. So you need to start finding ways and say, hey, if you want us to get married, you need to be honest with me. You have to start inviting them into your space when you go into the credit union or the banks. You have to start giving them little insight into what's going on into your financial circumstances. And if anybody that you intend to get married to does not want to do that, that is a red flag. And it's a serious red flag that something severe is potentially happening. So if the person does not want to do that, be willing to accept that if you get married to such a person, this might be a shocker. So you have to probe. And then the final thing you need to do before you say I do concerning finances, you need to observe. So if you're probing and that's not working, if you're trying to have the honest conversation and that's not working, then you stop talk and you pay attention. Observe what the person does with their money. When you go out, observe how they handle the payments. Observe what they do. When they invite you to an outing and their other friends, observe how they spend on their male friends. Observe what they do when it's time for you to celebrate a birthday or an anniversary. You need to pay attention to what they do concerning finances. Because I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to give you this impression that people are just going to be honest, or if you probe, they're going to answer. But this is the final thing you can do. If you're not getting them to speak, you're not getting them to open up if you probe, then you need to observe. Pay attention to what happens. What do they do if you are in some kind of financial trouble and did not ask them? Did they recognize that you had financial issues and offered you the money? Or do they know that you have a financial issue? Maybe you have a son, you're dating somebody, the child is sick, you have no money, clearly they know that, but somehow nothing cannot come forth from them. You have to pay attention to these little signs and understand that they are speaking larger volumes concerning finances. So you need to be very specific and very pointed when you're dating somebody who is telling you that they want to offer your hand in marriage and they are not willing to be open about finances. You can observe. And it's not difficult. You will see the signs there. Marriage and finance after you say I do. Now, when you actually get to that point, there are some things that you want to do. And I'm saying that if you did not get to do these things before now, after the fact, there is still time for you to have those discussions. And we are going to go through each of them step by step because finance is one of the things that is on the top 5 that destroys marriages. Let's just get that out of the way now. So children usually have to deal with having 2 parents in separate homes because there are financial issues. It's that bad. It's not a light matter, right? So you have to force yourself to have these conversations. After you get married, these are some of the things that you want to do. I have 5 keywords there. Centralize, optimize, establish lead, set goals, and integrate. What am I saying here? The first thing that you want to do is centralize major expenses. I'm saying this because one of the questions that comes a lot, should we have a joint account? Or should we just have our separate accounts? People always ask that question. When people go into counseling, they always ask that question. Should we have a joint account? Should we have a separate account? And there is this back and forth. Well, I'm going to suggest to you something that I feel can work on both sides and something that is equally important. I say you're going to have a joint account for major expenses that is strictly related to the house. Mortgage, food, bill payments, the child's education, joint account. Why? Because these things affect the family. These things affect the family. No one person should want to have a monopoly in a relationship and say, well, okay, I'm responsible for paying the child's school fees, but you have no idea if that money is going to come. That's unfair to the house. Any expense that is going to affect the home needs to be in a joint account. So, if 2 parties are working, whether or not one is working in a permanent environment where they have a fixed salary or the other is a business person or the other is a contract worker, whatever the case may be, there has to be a mechanism for the respective funds that are specific to these household expenses that are necessary for you to operate and run your house to enter into a joint account. Why is that important? Just imagine that you are paying a mortgage and your husband has all his money stacked in one account. According to him, you have no idea what's going on there. I want you to understand that the world of finance is very individual.
Very individual. It don't matter if you're married. You cannot go into the bank. You cannot go into the credit union and say, that's my husband. Nobody cares. That has nothing to do with anything. You can't go up to a teller and say, that's my husband, I need to know what's on his account. That's a no-no. That person owns that account. That's individually his or her asset. That's their account. So you can't know whatever is happening there. You can't. And so just imagine there is a mortgage. And one party is being committed to that mortgage payment and the other is not. How are you going to get that money from the other account to pay the mortgage? When the account goes into arrears and the banks and the credit unions begin to call you, how are you going to get a wife who is insisting, I'm not paying that mortgage because you're cheating on me? Or a husband who is insisting, I'm not paying that mortgage because I think I need to use my money how I want to use it, even after agreeing to build a house together. You see the kind of things that can happen when you do things together and then people get upset? You have to understand that even if you have a broken relationship, circumstances are not breaking. You have a house, even if you decide you're not speaking to one another or one person is going the other way, that mortgage has to get paid. You have a child and they have to go to school and you're sending them to a private school. It's $800 or $1,000 a month. One person goes on rent because they're separated from you. You think the school cares that you and your husband not living in koinonia relationship? No. At the end of the month or at the end of the term, they expect that money. So there are things that pertain to your relationship that does not separate just because you do. And that is critical for you to understand. We have to be wise when dealing with finance and relationships. Finance don't act like love. It doesn't. Love is premised on feelings, well, not real love. There are emotions involved. And these things are premised on feelings and they change. But your financial reality, they are absolute. And that is part of the reason why people end up in so much distress, because even if their relationship is broken, their financial realities are not. So I'm saying to you, there are things you ought to do now to protect yourself from that. So, major expenses relating to the household, you have a joint account, joint access. If one party, number one, if you have a joint account, one person can just decide they're not sending the money there anymore. It's going to be very difficult. Or one person is not just going to decide, I'm coming to take out what is mine, if that money is allocated to a mortgage. So there are protections for both the husband and the wife when you establish joint account for things like that. But what about having your individuality? You ask, what if my husband is a compulsive spender? He's not a bad guy, but he just cannot manage finance. What do I do? Well, I'm saying optimize your individual financial empowerment by maintaining separate accounts after the fact. So you commit your part of the mortgage, you commit your part of the child's fees, you commit your part of the food and of your bills. Some people have different arrangements. You might have a home where the husband is solely responsible for the mortgage. The wife might be solely responsible for the food. It doesn't matter who's taking responsibility or who has shared expenses. If you have a joint account where you have one card, equal access, nobody can't rob anybody easily. And if it happens, you will know. But you also need to maintain individuality for two reasons, because people are different. Right? I might be more conscientious about future implications, and I may want to save for the rainy days. My husband may not. He may be a happy-go-lucky person, and he may feel like I need to live for today. And that is often the case in relationship. One person is more concerned, one person is more focused, one person is more careful, and the other is, they want to live. And you should not stop people from experiencing what they want to experience financially, because it is important for their well-being. So after you save towards the house, the rest of your money should be allocated to you. Do what you want. At the end of the month, if I feel like having a drink with my girls, or if I feel like going to a restaurant, I feel like doing a spa day, and I want to be able to do that, I should be able to have that empowerment to do that. Right? Your husband should not have to go to a wife to ask for money because everything is joint. Or a wife should not just have to go and, can I have this because everything is joint? No. You commit to what you need to commit to, and you recognize that you are a working individual and you too need your individuality. So establish separate accounts. That's one reason. The other reason why you want to establish a separate account after the fact is that one person can literally save the household. If one person is a compulsive spender, very poor with finances, the other person who is responsible oftentimes can fill in the slack, oftentimes can save the household. And so you cannot put everything together when you have limited control. You want to be able to leverage off of the different strengths financially from one another. And to do that, you still need to maintain separate accounts for those reasons. Establish a lead very early on. Who is the best person to be the financial representative? And notice my word. I'm not just saying taking control of the finances. Being a financial rep. What do I mean? If you have to go to the bank because you probably have a business idea as a couple, or maybe you're going to the bank because you want to expand your home, who is best suited to have that conversation with the loan officer? Who is more informed about the issues? Who can listen better? Who can question better? You need to establish who is a stronger financial representative. The person who can manage these issues when it's time to negotiate. So it's not just about, oh, well, you know, I'm in charge. I'm using financial representative because you may have a situation where the husband may be more financially responsible, but he may not be the best person to articulate what the home needs if they have to make a negotiating case in the bank. So if you need a financial rep, you need to establish who is the person that's going to take that lead. Why? Does the person have more experience in that area? Would they be able to understand the language when they go in front of these institutions? Would they be able to spot things that you wouldn't ordinarily spot? So you need to have a financial representative for these reasons. It's not about who is in charge of whom. People get very tesky about these things. Somebody has to be in charge, but it has to be on the premise of what is most useful for your relationship, and that is how you need to think about it. Setting goals. As a married couple, you can't just get married and then think, oh, we're going to build a house. Oh, we're going to buy land. No. You have to sit down and you have to talk about these things. Where do we want to buy the land? How much do we want to spend for this land? How much can we afford? By what time do we want to do this together? You've got to see yourself as a team because you are. And you need to be able to establish these things. There's something about writing things down. Somehow when you write them down, they start to come to life. So stop talking about where you want to see yourself financially as a married couple. And start sitting down and writing, documenting these things, and holding one another accountable. That is a crucial part of your marriage when it comes to finances. And finally, integrating. What do I mean? Your children need to understand what's going on. They too need to understand the financial realities of what's going on in the house. You can't be making financial decisions, for example, that might be requiring you as a home to scale back. But your child is so deathly spoilt that they are crying and kicking steam because they want this and they want that and they're tormenting your head. No. When you make these important discussions, you need to involve the children. And another critical reason why it is important to involve your children at a young age when it comes to finance is about heritage. We talk about generational wealth. Why do you think when the patriarchs who have started businesses and built them, when they die, it's less than a year, billions of dollars crash into the ground? Money takes on wings. It is written in the Bible. Not because you have $1 billion it's going to last forever. Money takes on wings, and if you do not attend to it with a plan, if you don't attend to it with carefulness, with thoughtfulness, it's going to disappear. We have cases like that in Grenada among families who have had wealth, and as soon as the father died, everything all fell down. Why? Because the children were never involved in that conversation. They don't know how to carry on that generational wealth. So you need to get them involved. You need to establish savings patterns for them. You can have family susus, and you can allow your children, if you give them allowances, have a susu, and help them to understand the value of saving. They're not too young, but everybody needs to be on board with that. What are some important considerations for married couples? And this is important because it begins to show up, God forbid, when there is a divorce. So listen and listen well. Whose name is on the title deed and mortgage? It's a critical thing. Sometimes you get married to a person who already own land, and you live with them for years and you do all what you need to do, and that person decides, well, you need to get out of my house. You have to get out of their house. And even if it's going through a legal process, yes, if you're married, you don't just lose stuff, but it's painful in and between. So you need to establish, if I'm married, we need to share title on that property. We need to share ownership on that mortgage. It's not a one-way street when you get married. These things are important, and they become bitter when you become bitter. Whose names are on the bills? A lot of people don't check that. Let me tell you something. I'm not a lawyer, and we should get a lawyer to talk about these things here. What happens when you have to deal with sharing stuff, sharing assets after a divorce? I would bet a big part of it is being able to prove your financial contribution. But we don't do that. We're happily married, so everything is just going to be great. You know? So one person have all their name on the bills, which says they are paying all the bills, even if you're paying. Whose names are on the bills? That's important. What kind of evidence can you produce to the court that you have in fact been contributing to this house financially? You don't think about that. But we need to start thinking about these things. Implications of building life on unresolved family land is a big issue in Grenada. Many people are settling on lands. Prior to, a couple of years ago, I don't know if it's about 4 years, I think. I could stand to be corrected here. The issue of statutory lands, being able to get somebody who lived there for some 50 years to say, oh, yes, I know their parents and so on, then you could draw paper. The system has stopped that. Now you have to get possessory title. And it's very, very expensive to do that. You don't have ownership anymore just because you've been settling on lands. We need to learn about these things and how it impacts us financially. Don't just get married and go and settle on family land. That is unresolved. It doesn't make any sense. Anything can happen any day and make it worse if the land in question is your grandmother's, because you have no right to that. Their children come first, and even with them, it is horrific, especially where there's a large number of them. Seek ownership together. What do I do if my partner did not keep his or her end of the bargain? This is an important question, and you have to find ways to deal with those issues, right? The first thing, if you're married, you can't just get up and say, I'm walking out of this relationship. You have to find ways to deal with this. You may have to invite a therapist at that point in time. You may have to seek professional financial counseling as to how to get about getting a better partner engaged. There are ways, but you have to start having those discussions. And then my husband or wife already owns a home before we get married. They also had children before we got married. What should I be concerned about? The law does not decipher anymore between children who are out of wedlock and in wedlock. A child is a child. So when you get married into a situation like that, there are questions that you need to ask. And if that is your situation, I will strongly advise that you speak to a lawyer about what that can mean for you as a wife and the children that you have with such a man, if it is a man who owns it, and vice versa, if it is a woman that owns it. These are regular situations that plague marriages financially. And you can't just be getting up and living your life and not discussing these issues, thinking about these issues, and having a plan to address them. Because that is what begins to become a horror. When people tell you divorce is a horror, it's issues like that. Issues like that. Living in a house, paying bills and all of that, and then suddenly you have to get out. Issues like that is what makes it so terrible and cause some people, quite honestly, sometimes to even contemplate suicide. It's not easy to put thousands and thousands, sometimes millions of dollars over all your years working, contributing, and then you're told you have to walk away. But it happens if you don't do these things first. So you must think about these things in marriage and finance. The power of leveraging strengths and ideas to increase wealth. You ought to see your spouse as a business partner at times. You didn't just come together because you had some kind of emotional attraction. There are things about you mentally, intellectually, that match. How can I leverage what I have with what my husband has in order to build wealth? Stop looking outside of the home all of the time. Sometimes there are great synergies that can happen right in your home. What does my wife have that I need? And what does my husband have that can help advance my business? And stop thinking because you're married, oh, it's family, so it can't work. Some of the biggest businesses worldwide are built on families. Many of them, billionaires. Look at the Walmart family. How it is that they have made it. Why? Because they recognize that a business relationship is separate. So even if you and your husband is getting into a business arrangement, there are things that you ought to do, which we will discuss. You can't treat it as a household relationship and think everything is going to be okay. No. We have to graduate out of these things. You need to team up to do short-term investment projects and split the gains. Absolutely nothing is wrong with treating your spouse as a business partner under the right circumstances. You need to combine your resources to invest in legacy investments. Sometimes you're going everywhere chasing everyone, and you don't even check on the fact that two of you have income coming in. You don't ask yourself, how can this income be leveraged? Sometimes you're going after a bank for months, a whole year, you can't get $5,000. And both of you together earning more than $5,000, and you're still looking outside to get that $5,000 capital input. It makes no sense. But the reason why we do that is because we don't see that. And when I talk about financial awareness, this is what I'm talking about. Becoming awakened to the possibilities that exist in your marriage relationship when it comes to finance. So you have to start looking at one another differently. I want to make a note here to say that legally binding agreements should be strongly discussed or considered. When you're entering into a business relationship with your husband or wife, you've got to draft those legal documents. The problem with us in these parts, we have no respect for things like this. We think, we're family, so we shouldn't do that. This is insulting. That is financial ignorance. And it's not a disrespect. All of us have been victims of it. We think we shouldn't do that because you know how it's going to look if I'm entering into an arrangement with my mom or dad. No. It's a business arrangement. It's separate from your relationship. And the mistake we make is thinking it's the same. And then when things go south, we cry in blood. Legally binding agreements as long as you and your husband gets into a business relationship. I don't care if it's to manage a one-wing bedroom that you are renting. The lease agreement needs to express the conditions that benefits both of you. It's important. You don't just have somebody go in and do stuff and then everything is in their name and then suddenly you're trying to figure out what's going on here. I put money into this. How come I'm not getting anything from it? You have no agreement. Then the law will have to deal with it as it sees fit and fair. And sometimes it's not fair. What are some of the things that you can get into as married couples? Financial investment options. 3 of the biggest things I want to suggest: asset acquisition, skills investment, and education investment. What do you acquire? I want to suggest some unique things, not just basic things. Buy land for speculation, not just to live and build, not just for your child. Buy land for speculative purposes. What do I mean? You're buying it to sell. You're buying it, and then after 2-3 years, you want to see how the price of that land has changed, and you want to decide, honey, is this a good time to sell? I have dealt with clients like this, and I have seen how money have multiplied just by making investments like that. Buying lands in places that you think means nothing, and then the minute time you put one road and you cut down one tree, all of a sudden everybody wants it. And then people start building 2 houses, go down, it changes from $6 to $8 to $9, then suddenly it's $10 and $12. You buy it for speculation. You don't just buy one house and think that this is it. I'm going to live on this for the rest of my natural life and pass it on to my child. No. The purchasing power of money changes. So you need to speculate. Buy a plot of land. 3,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, 10,000 square feet, 1 acre agricultural lands. Who cares? Buy it and wait. Wait to see what comes next to that piece of property, and then when the time is right, sell it and buy more. Speculation purposes. Land and building for lease. You don't have to build a wall house on every structure. Buy a home, build 3 wooden cottages, and get people to live in it at a cheaper rent. It's the power of volume. You don't have the money to build or to construct a wall house that you want to rent for $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month. Rent 3 houses, right, for the cost of one, $1,000. and see where it goes. Multiply. Have whole houses rented for $1,500. With everything outfitted in a wooden structure, it's cheaper for you. You get more money. It's about volume. You want to invest in gold and precious jewels. It's something I've been saying to people recently. When you're looking to buy something for your wife or husband, save up and buy solid gold. 14K and up. It's not for flash. These things can be utilized in hard times. You can literally pawn them for actual good money. Don't just go and buy false stuff. Save the money and buy good stuff. You also want to invest in art. This is huge. Don't just go and buy washed out arts for $200. Find the arts for $1,000 and more and save towards that. Instead of taking your bonus and buying a bunch of curtains and carpets and all of these nonsense, by the time you finish Christmas, you spend $10,000 on what? Things that you literally have to replace maybe before 12 months. That makes no sense. Use your bonus otherwise. Come together and buy a solid piece of art. Use your bonus to invest in stocks and shares. Dear Mr. Duncan spoke about that. Many of us didn't even realize we could have done that. How are you spending your Christmas bonus? I know the answer. We have all been victims of the same circumstance. It's time to move away from that. Use your bonus differently. Skills investment, right? Provide capital funding for your husband or wife. You recognize that they have a skill. They're probably very good at plumbing. They're probably very good at drafting. You recognize that, honey, I would like to invest $5,000 in you, but this is what we do when you get the money. Draft an agreement, right? If you have it, don't be greedy and say, I'm not giving that man anything. That's foolishness. You live in the house together. His suffering is yours. If you can help him, help him. If he can help you, help. If you can help her, help her. Don't have them straddling and suffering. Oh, he never listens to me. He's going to have to pay the price. We are going to have to pay the price. It's foolishness. I'm saving and he's not saving, so he's not touching my money. Nonsense. You see that he or she has a skill, invest in them. And say, this is how this money is going to spread in this house. And that might be a great way to control the way that they utilize money. Because now, they've got to answer to the lender. All right? So don't be greedy and don't use money as an attack mechanism in a marriage. That makes no sense because both of you are married. Right? The reality is everything is going to affect the whole. Invest in one another. And education, a powerful investment. Right? Sometimes one person in the relationship wants to over and out educate. Stop and pause and say, honey, I think you should go and do this degree. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to hold back. And I think you should step forward. That's how you build one another. Why should you just, I mean, what benefit it is for one person to be overly educating themselves? And the other person always has to make the sacrifice because, oh no, she's doing a master's or she's doing a professional certification. No. Share that. Decide to sacrifice your present desire and say, you go for it. And when he's finished, say, you go for it. That's how you build yourself educationally and give yourself leverage to have more financially. Moving on. What are some financial mechanisms that you can do? Use a budget. And again, a budget is not a complex thing. It's all about understanding your finances and knowing the kinds of monies that you have to meet with it. And you don't pretend that you don't have a limitation on money. You do. So stop spending as if there is no limit to the source of your income. That is foolishness, right? If you cannot afford a certain vehicle, don't get it. Why do you need to buy a new vehicle for $140,000 and you cannot afford? It's not just the payment of the vehicle loan, but it's also the payment of the insurance, it's the payment of the maintenance, it's the payment of the inspection. Where are you getting that kind of money? If you don't have it, what's going to happen? You're going to have to go to the credit union, you're going to have to go to the bank and borrow. It makes no sense. Buy something that you can afford. And when you ignore your budget and your financial reality, you make these bad decisions, traveling every year. Yeah, just because you want to say every year me and my family are traveling and you know you have to borrow for it. Doesn't make any sense. These are decisions that you need to make together. It's not about what people think. You have to know your financial circumstances and make decisions to suit that. Family discussions. We spoke about that. I'm not going to exhaust it. Documenting plan with timelines. It's a reiteration. Assigning roles. Again, It's a reiteration and accountability partners. When somebody messes up in the whole plan, you need to have that discussion. You need to hold each other accountable. But we cannot meet this expense because you have made that decision. How do you intend to fix this? You've got to hold one another accountable and treat this as a serious issue. So moving along, common law union and finance. The single most important question that you need to ask in this situation is, what are my rights? So maybe you need to have a sit down with a lawyer. If you're in a common law union, you need to understand what your rights are. What do I do if I invest X, Y, and Z into that relationship? What happens if we live in a house together? What happens if we squatted on the land together and then, the woman ends up with the title deed or the man ends up with the title deed, and after 40 years of living together and having children, they're now in their 40s and we're splitting. What are my rights? So you need to know your rights. Questions you must seek out to answer for when it comes to financial implications in a common law union. If my partner is the sole provider, do I have any rights over anything that he or she buys? You need to find that out. Do I have any rights over the property? Do I have any rights over the vehicle? Do I have any rights over the bank account? So one person is a housewife, maybe it's a woman and she's home, cooking, cleaning, maintaining the house, everything. They're not married, but the man is a provider. Can he just throw you out and pick up another woman? After 20-something odd years of a relationship, you need to know. And based on what the lawyer tells you, then you need to make a decision. Is it worth staying in a common law union? Based on what you find out, that's a decision you may have to make. If there is a breakup, who has rights to what assets? Legally, where both parties contributed, and this is another problem. Sometimes you have two sets of people giving to the asset. The wife might, the common law person, the woman involved might get a $5,000, and she might give him and say, okay, put up with what you have and let's get a vehicle together. What happens if you break up? Who owns that vehicle? Whose name is on the vehicle? And even if the one party's name is on it over the other, what rights do I have? So it's unclear when you're living that kind of relationship financially. So you must have a discussion with a lawyer, both of you. It's useful to do it together, but if you recognize that there is a negative behavioral pattern, then one person or the other needs to go and have an individual conversation with the lawyer and say, hey, these are the situation. These are the contributions I have made. This is the number of years I've been with this man or I've been with this woman. This is what is going on now. What kind of legal protection do I have? You have to do that, right? Should I enter into a joint loan arrangement, or should I become a guarantor for a loan in such a case? Well, my advice to you is watch that carefully with an eye. I would not suggest that. I've seen too much problems with these things in the context of the financial institution. I've seen so much terrible, awful, sad situation coming out of people with that kind of arrangement and making that kind of arrangement. Usually, the person who is standing security is the more responsible one, and the person who is asking for them to stand is the kind of deadbeat person when it comes to financial management. That's what happens. And then they run out on you. They don't pay nothing. They're living in the same house with you, and they're telling you, I'm not paying that loan. And then the institution begins to call you. You don't know what they did with the money. You don't know how far they spend the money. Whatever they said they were taking the money for, you can't see it. But the institution is calling you, and you have to pay. That's what you signed up for when you signed a loan. It's in the event that this person doesn't keep their side of the bargain. Are you willing to do that? Financial implications. How can I protect my children's heritage if large investments were made together before the relationship was severed? What are you doing if it's a case where the relationship is splitting at a pivotal point in a child's life? Let's say the child is moving from primary school into secondary school where everything gets more expensive and you have invested so much money. One or the other says, I'm walking. There are cases where women have left men with children to take care of. It's not just the man leaving the woman. After both have committed to serious financial input into that relationship. What do you do? So you just can't go on living as if this is a happy, nice story and we're going to be here together forever. Finances are serious, separate beasts that you need to deal with. Right? And in order to be able to maintain your mindset and to maintain your own financial stability, you need to ask these questions to a professional person. Go to a lawyer and find out. Have them explain to you what you should do in these cases. If you do decide to act as a guarantor, what are some of the indemnification? In other words, what are some of the things that you can state or stipulate that can protect you? Go and pay the money and get the information, because the information can likely save you thousands. You need to sit with a lawyer. Can a will be done under such an arrangement? It's an interesting question. Two of you in a common law union, you've bought stuff together. Can a will be done? Don't just sit there and, the person live and they die, and then some long lost child come and they now want to take over daddy plot of land because daddy left me out and he took care of you and those children. What is the law going to say about a situation like that? Who has the right, if there's a common law wife in that situation and an elderly child in an outside relationship starts to come and make claim on that property both of you build together and one person is dead? You see what goes on? So you need to ask these questions and you need to sit with a lawyer. If one party doesn't want to go, you go and find out and protect yourself and your financial investments. So I want to strongly advise that any financial venture you enter into together should be supported by a legally binding document. And important, get into the habit of keeping records of all your contributions, especially in a situation like that. You give Mr. $5,000, Mr. gives you $10,000, document it and let the other sign. No money in passing until that signature is there. Because when things begin to happen, and this person wants to take the vehicle that you gave them $10,000 towards, how are you going to get it back? Where is your proof that you have contributed financially into this relationship? And this is not just for common law union, this is also for married people. Where is your evidence that you have given financially? You have to be able to prove that in the court of law. There are some things you must prove. How are you going to do that? So we have to stop being naive and we have to start to be responsible. And as I said, you have to start exercising wisdom. Uncommitted relationship and finance, common features of such a relationship. I had established that an uncommitted relationship is the boyfriend-girlfriend type of drama. So you're with a man for 10 years. He's living in Tempe, you living in Budge Grove. You have a child together, the child is living with you in Budge Grove. But it's 10 and 11 years and there's nothing going on there. There's not even a common law union, but money passing like peas. I'm telling you, money will always be an issue. It doesn't care. You don't have to be in no marriage for money to become an issue. Once there is a relationship there, it's going to affect you. And it's strange, but a lot of people in uncommitted relationship do insane things, like get involved in constructing houses and getting involved in getting a truck to do a business together. All these consequential things, and there is no real binding commitment on the part of any. That is madness. And so we have to think twice. Don't allow your emotions and your heart to direct your decision as to if you spend the rest of your life with such a person without using your intellect and your logic and wisdom. There has to be a place for that, right? And you have to be real about these issues and be willing to walk away if that financial issue is not about to be resolved, because it's going to become a serious problem. I have seen it with my eyes way too much. Terrible breaking down times between married people who are no longer willing to stay married, between people in common law union. It's bitter. You see it as a beast coming out in the financial institutions. That's where you begin to see how nasty these things can get. It's terrible. That's where you begin to see how unfortunate certain people's circumstances can be. When you know, because you've been dealing with these clients, and you know who among the two were the real financially prudent one and who is getting the hottest part of the blows. It's unfortunate. And so this is what happens in uncommitted relationships and finance. The relationship could be long or short term, and it's a romantic relationship, but there's no common living arrangement. Your financial matters are usually kept separate. So you have your own account and the man has his own account. You may share a child or children, but that child or children is living with one person. You usually have an off and on relationship status. That's part of the reason why you can't even agree to live in a house together. Much more to get married. Because there is so much friction in that relationship that you can't even find yourself to owning anything together where there is some kind of legally binding agreement. You can't even do that, but yet for all you're spending 10 and 15 years and passing money. Finance is often a major component of such a relationship. Why? Because the woman would call, your child sick, I need X amount of money. Or I need a dress. I need to get my hair done. Or the man may have a problem and he might be like, watch now, you can't help me. I need a pullout. You can't give me a $500 a day. Just so. That's how the discussion is. And when you have these kind of informal discussions around finance, who's keeping record of what? Before you check it, the $500, the $20, the $40 become $50,000 in the space of 3 years. Money multiplies quickly, very quickly, and so it disappears fast. You have to be careful. But the impact of financial mismanagement and poor financial decisions in relationships are there to hit you forever. So what are some of the things that can happen? What are some of the circumstances and the financial implication of having an uncommitted relationship? One, it may be a case where there are multiple children involved and one person may be very lascivious. What do I mean? The man probably having 15 different children outside of your relationship. You think a child comes without money? One woman out of the 5 of you that he has children with could decide, this ain't going down so. I'm taking you to the court. 3 women could have a total of 5 children for that one man. And the 3 of them could decide, we're taking him to the court, and he has to pay the court fee by 5. Where is he going to get money to support you and the children that you have with him? Have you thought about that? Think twice before entering into a relationship. Don't just get into a relationship where there are children lightly. Nothing is wrong with having a relationship like that, but you must discuss these issues first. Find out about the guy. I'm sorry to say, but usually they're the ones who behave lasciviously. I'm not hitting you guys. I'm just saying it's just reality. But find out how many children exist and whether or not that man is taking care of his current child. Because that's a big indication as to whether or not he's going to take care of yours, whether you have them or not. So if that is the case with that guy, the likelihood that the financial responsibility of providing for the children will come from him is none and void. More than likely, you will have to provide for that child. Everything, doctor fee, school fee, books, everything. And there are countless Grenadian women who are literally stressed to their neck every single time Carnival is over and the new school term is about to open. It's terrible. It's sad. It's sad. Because they're the ones who are stuck with the kids, and so they have to find the financial support for them to cook the food, to buy the books. They're the ones. And that is why some women are financially distressed, and some women are even financially impoverished. Because if you have a relationship like that, that is what's going to happen, because you have to keep finding money to support these children alone. Where are you going to get the opportunity to invest in anything? How? Where are you even getting the mind to start thinking about building your financial capacity? It can't happen easily. So you need to think about that. You need to think about what happens if I get involved in a joint venture, right? One person may be required to take on the full burden if the other refuses to pay. There are cases I have seen where people could not even access their salary. Why? Because the 2 of them come nice, and one speaks very nicely. He's with her, she's with him. They get one party to come in the whole salary, and then they run off on the loan, and all of a sudden the bank and credit union telling you, you can't get that money, Month end come, you can't pay bill, you can't, nothing, you have no money. I've seen these things. It happens. That is a common feature of an uncommitted relationship. Think twice before you take your salary and just assign it willy-nilly. Repeated lending and giving up of personal funds to bail out the other person. Every time one of them keep coming because they have a financial problem, that is a red flag. You have no business. There's no reason for you to commit to giving such a person your money. They have not made a commitment to you. Why are you doing it? Why? Right? This will severely deplete your financial resources. It will stagnate your financial growth, and it will potentially lead you to a debt trap or poverty. And that is the reason why we have so much poverty financially in Grenada. People are literally living paycheck to paycheck. Let us examine the reasons why. You think it's just because people are not getting sufficiently paid? I have seen people who have earned $20-something thousand a month, and I've seen people who've earned $700 a month, and I've seen the person earning $700 owning much more than the person who is working for 20-something odd thousand. I've seen people working for 20-something thousand come in every single month to get money as a loan for bills, and the person with 700 not doing it. It's not about the amount that you have. And you need to get that into your head. Money is an illusion. I've been around it long enough to know how you deal with it, how you treat with it. Whether or not you respect it, whether or not you have a plan for it, is going to be the determining factor whether you have 25 cents or $25 million. That is the bottom line. Right? So you need to be concerned about how the things that you are doing, how it's impacting your financial status. Right? Using your personal account for purposes of deposits. A lot of these people, a lot of women get into trouble because they're with men in an uncommitted relationship who have no real job. But they come into you and say, put 10,000, put that money on your account for me. When you do hear the cry and FI, you start to investigate, you end up in jail. Because he's washing the money through your account. Financial matters. Where is he working? Why aren't you questioning the sum of money? How is it that you're getting this money? Where did you get this money from? Why should I put it on my account? Stay away from these things. You need to pay attention. Stop being such a lover of money that you don't even care where the person is getting the money from. You can end up in jail. What's going to happen to your kids? Who's going to take care of them financially? All of these things are things you need to concern yourself if you are in a committed relationship. So things you need to consider when you are in an uncommitted relationship. Don't treat this relationship like a marriage. Your legal protection is not equal. Pay attention to behavioral details and domestic history. Avoid any kind of joint arrangement that has financial implications. Do not take it lightly. And even if you do, make sure you have a legally binding agreement. Any business or other financial venture must include a legally binding agreement. So now we're coming down to business relationships and finance. How can businesses establish relationships that can maximize financial opportunities? Number one, you need to actively look for synergistic relationships. What do I mean by synergy? You know, how well your business may interact with another business that you don't even know the person. You don't know the person. But they are doing certain things. You are hearing certain things. You're following them on social media. And you realize that the end of their business is the beginning of yours. You need to learn to reach out to these people. So somebody sells clothes. Another person is selling handmade local jewelries. These are things that go together. Well, can we enter into a special business arrangement? It doesn't have to be a business partnership. It can just be a business arrangement. That is a business relationship. If you give me X amount of your jewelry, I will sell it at this price. This is my cut. And I'm going to give you X amount of my clothes. That's how you spread and market without necessarily paying a lot of money. Find out who is selling things that can go very well with yours. And don't be shy. And as black people, we have to take a page from the Indians and these type of people. They understand the value that wealth brings to their family and how it benefits their heritage and their generation. So these people are watching face when it comes to sharing resources and agreeing with one another. Why it is that we always so mistrustful of one another? Oh, no, I ain't getting into no business with this person. I don't trust them. Well, then, so we go stay. We will always stay at the bottom if we think like that. That's why we don't have more local thriving businesses. That is why the Indians have bought out so much of our own local landmarks. That's why it's so easy for them to get loans in the institutions. Why do you think? Because they're not standalone. They're working together. They understand that it is a risk to trust, but they take the risk anyway. Why don't we trust one another? Why do we treat each other as a common enemy? Makes no sense. See the synergies? and begin to reach out to one another. Buy stakes in a business, right? In the famous show called Shark Tank, that's what happens. You see, America and these countries are where they are at, partly because of the way they do things. It's not a society that depends heavily on government to do anything, to create anything. They expect in a capitalist market that the people with the innovation and the ideas create these opportunities. So these multi-billionaires come together and they have a show. What are they doing? Essentially stealing ideas. They have the money and you want the investment. So they know what is a brilliant business, but they also recognize you don't have the money. So they buy a stake. They're not going and begging the government for a grant. They're not going and complaining, oh, the financial situation here is too bad. The bank don't trust small businesses. They don't care about that. They find the opportunities among themselves. Who are you talking to as a businessman or businesswoman in Grenada? How are you leveraging the success of one? What ideas can you bring to one that can be of such benefit that they are willing to give you the capital to start it? Why are we not taking these types of financial risks in business? That's why our businesses are stagnating. That is why they are dwarfed. Our businesses have a dwarf syndrome. That's why we are not seeing anything beyond what we have seen for the past 30 years. Even some of our household businesses, same thing we're seeing. Why? Because wherever there's a limitation on finance, there's going to be a limitation in expansion. And so we want the government to provide jobs. What are the businessmen doing? How are you using your business to create jobs? You're the ones who are supposed to create it, not necessarily the government. There's only so much the government can do. A country cannot run with taxes. It's repressive. We must create opportunities to make ourselves wealthy, and we do have the ability to do that. But if we continue to operate in this mindset that we can't trust one another, and I'm keeping that idea to myself, I don't want this person to hear what I have to say because they're going to get better off, well, then all of us going to suffer. The same fate in different quantities. We need to change that. Establish business co-ops. When I thought of that, I want to stick a pin here. Cooperatives in Grenada is a very sensitive issue for me. I have an unfeigned love for the cooperative movement. I highly respect the philosophy of cooperativism, and I live by that because I recognize this is the answer. It is what takes simple people and increase them and expand them and give them an opportunity and a platform that otherwise other entities would never give them. Again, it is the power of the sum of the parts. You have to trust, you have to build confidence, you have to be willing to work for a time without taking. All of the financial cooperatives in this country that have exploded. Look at Ariza Credit Union. Look at it. Look at Nexa Credit Union. Look at Communal Cooperative Credit Union. Financial giants. We have the likes of Grenville Credit Union coming up. Every credit union is equally motivated. Now that banks have gone, this is our financial reality. And so because there is an opportunity in the market, you're going to see some changes in those movements that the movement itself has not even planned for. It's a natural metamorphosis that's taking place. And so they also have to be aware of the changes that's going to come up upon them because it's going to happen. Why don't you establish cooperatives among yourselves? So, for example, you have a group of contractors. One contractor may have formal education and he may understand how to build properly. You have another 5 or 6 contractors that have experience, but they may not necessarily have the know-it-all. The one that is excellent in knowledge is taking all the work. And then the 5 who have just limited experience, halfway building people houses. And listen how this thing works. When you have a contractor that doesn't have key information, and you don't want to work with him because who is he and you want all of the big projects because you want to make the millions. And so you leave these people and you don't have no mentorship, nothing. And so they go and they build a house, they build a 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 houses. These houses are now insured with insurances. When the winds come and the waves come and they crash them, the insurances are going to have to recover those funds. When the insurances have too much of the same risk to recover, they have to increase the insurances. When they increase the insurances, it affects you and I, whether or not we took a good contractor. The point I am making is when we establish cooperatives, when we come together and we group our strengths and we work off of each other and we build institutions from within, they create financial advantages that we could never obtain ourselves. You cannot see it. I remember the story of the Teachers Credit Union when they just started. Nobody knew that it would come into this. Very small. When they tell you the first loan, what it was, the first deposit, what it was. Look at it today, multi-million-dollar institution. Imagine builders coming together and pooling resources. And when I talk about resources, having materials, the cooperative, they are investing in buying bulk materials. What do you think is going to happen when Huggins, or Hubbards rather, cannot bring in cement, but they have? Because they have been accumulating these materials together. What do you think is going to happen when they're trying to get a certain nail by these institutions, but they don't have? Your cooperative takes into account all of these things. Your cooperative takes into account teaching each other and ensuring that the people within that cooperative understand the value of educating themselves and advancing their knowledge. It makes for better for everybody. And this is just one idea as to how you can have businesses forming cooperatives. In Canada and these places, they have cooperatives for space. Just imagine that. They've come together to invest in a building just to rent space. There are limitless opportunities with cooperatives. And businesses have to find ways of coming together to be able to deal with some of the shortfalls in the open market when you establish cooperatives. Networking via social media, a great way to identify financial opportunities. Stop saying that you're old school. The reality is we're living in a modern environment. We're living in a technological environment. Even if you have to pay somebody to go through social media, pay them. Find out what's going on there and how that can affect your business. It's a great way as well to find new financial opportunities for you to invest in. And then you want to trade business practices by joining forces. This is an important one. The old must engage the young. The young has an edge on technological advancement. They know how to use technology to draft buildings, and the old may have some key understanding and some key experiences that if they come together, it makes for betterment. How much of you businessmen are reaching out to the youth? It's not about their attitude. It's about what you can gain from one another. And this is why I'm talking about going beyond the taboo of just seeing relationships and seeing people as people. You've got to see what you can gain from one another financially. What do you do before shaking hands if you intend to get involved in a business? Ensure that any new business arrangement arising from a business, that it is clearly defined legally. You want to make sure that, the business that you're getting involved in, that is properly registered with CAIPO, that you observe the government's rules, that you go into AML, do all what you need to do. Don't get involved in half-hearted business relationships because regulation is on the increase. You want to avoid a gentleman's agreement. That should never be anything stipulated in your contracts. What is a gentleman's agreement? Because this person say I'm going to do this, your word is as good as what? Put it down in legally binding agreements. Stop making promises to one another without having those legal documentation. Important, you need to learn to engage specific professionals for guidance. We have a way that we believe we have businesses and we know all and we can manage our books. No. Part of the reason why some of you are in the red constantly and have to use trade credit, what do I mean by that? You don't pay, you delay paying so that you keep money inside. A lot of businesses, you think that they have financial strength, they don't. Why? Because they want to presume that they understand the financial elements, you don't. Don't be afraid to pay a professional. Don't be afraid to get somebody to assess your business financially every 3 years. Find out what's going on. How can this be better? Don't be afraid to call a professional to cost your decisions before you decide. Get somebody to cost the decision. There is such a thing as decision costing. If I have 1, 2, 3 alternatives, which of the 3 should I do? Which of the three will give me the maximum profit? We need to get involved in this level of intensity when it comes to our business financial relationships. Protect your established businesses by setting clear boundaries. And what do I mean by that? If you have an original business and you're trying to get involved into another one, make sure that whatever business investment you get into, it's not going to affect your existing business. You got to protect your idea. Measure your investment and know how much you can afford to lose. That's important. So you take risks, but don't take risks that you cannot afford to lose. Ensure that you are getting a fair deal, especially where vested capital is considered. If you're going to put money into somebody's business, if you're going to invest into somebody, what is the fair deal going to look like? What is my stake in this? Is business, and you need to be clear about these things. So gains and losses, we're looking to wind down. What are some of the financial gains you can get if you enter into a solid financial relationship? You're going to see increased income capacity. If you don't, you're going to have a loss of control over your personal income and business income. You're going to gain more opportunities to minimize costs and maximize profits in the case of a business. If you don't, you're going to inherit poor credit reputation. There's nothing worse than being bad pay. Even if you bounce back, let me tell you, the institutions go right back. Right back. They search everywhere. The ECCB, I believe, is coming on stream with a credit bureau. It's coming. And let me tell you how invasive credit bureaus are. The United States operate with one. Every detail. Pages from your light bill to how you pay your loan, whether or not you owe some distributor. That is how invasive it's going to be. And anything there that sparks interest or sparks some kind of warning, you ain't getting no money from the bank easy. We think it's bad now. So I'm telling you, I'm teaching you now to find unique ways to create money, because it's going to get real terrible when that credit bureau is established, right? You're going to gain the ability to access finance through the financial system. Let's face it, there are some things you need to get through a financial system, but you've got to have a good credit character. You have to have financial capacity. You have to have the established collaterals. These are things you need to have, right? And if you join forces together in a healthy financial relationship, you're going to be able to make those cases successfully. If not, you're going to be financially stagnant and you're going to potentially fall into poverty. You're going to be able to gain the expansion of your income source, whilst if not, it's going to prevent you from the ability to own assets if you enter into poor financial relationships. And finally, you're going to find pathways to significantly building financial wealth through synergies. Opportunities and doors would be opened for you, not just locally, but regionally and internationally, because as you touch one another in those business relationships, you are touching every single person that person knows. That is the power of having great financial relationships. However, if you do not, you are going to suffer psychological damage, and that includes depression, suicide, abuse, and even violence. When you have financial distress, this, my dear, is the ultimate result. So the key takeaways: 2 is better than 1. See the value in joining forces to build wealth. Break the mold. Start being open about your concerns and aspirations as it pertains to finance. Finance must not be a taboo topic. Look for synergies that can make your lives better financially. A relationship is certainly not only about love. Plan your financial path. A vision without a plan is like yesterday's thought. You forget it. Formalize your financial undertakings. Get comfortable with the idea of legally binding agreements regardless of your relation. Mother and daughter, mother and son, husband and wife, friend and friend, legally binding agreements. That has to be the order of the day. And finally, engage with financial and legal experts. Do not presume to know everything. At this juncture, I want to thank you. I think it was certainly insightful. It is my hope that you would have gained a lot to think about. And the floor is open if there are any questions, clarifications, or further information you may want to know. Thank you very much. You have been a great audience.
We have a microphone set up in the aisle, and we're asking you please to move to the microphone to ask your question. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
There is
evening.
an online question from Joanna. She wants to know, is it wise to keep proper records of all financial contributions made in common law unions?
Oh, yes, certainly. And Joanna, I believe that I would have raised that. Record keeping is critical. And the reason why you want to keep records is for the explicit reason of being able to prove your contributions. And that becomes useful if there is a problem in the relationship that is requiring a severing, and then there is a question over who owns what, to prevent yourself from ending up in a situation where you lose rights to things that you have contributed to. You need to be able to keep your records. It's just a good thing to do. If it is in a family relationship, the family should have a system of keeping records. It is about both persons really ensuring. And record keeping is not just for when bad times happen in terms of a divorce, if that is the case, or a split. But record keeping is also good to make your case if there's some issue coming out from an institution and you need to be able to prove your payment. It's just a good thing to keep your business records. After a certain amount of years, you are allowed, about 7 years, you're allowed to destroy them. You don't want to keep too much. But as things go on, you have to keep important records of all your financial expenditures. So that is a must do. All right, well, it seems people are clear enough. Or if you have questions, don't be afraid. It's an open floor. And you need to be able to ask the questions that you want to ask, the clarity that you need to make. Don't be intimidated. The point of this is to create open discussion so that we can confront some of the financial issues that we are faced with. We have to become very open about discussing finances. So if you have a question, do not feel ashamed or afraid to ask. This is the time.
Good night, everyone.
Good evening.
My question is, when it comes to having a spouse that may be very talkative with their family or relatives.
Bring it down a bit.
So when you have a situation when the partner would be very excessive in terms of sharing personal information with family members, that is, of course, not a part of your actual relationship. What advice do you have in terms of sharing or being open with that financial information, knowing that you would like to keep it within who it's supposed to really be between, so you and your partner and the kids, etc.?
Yes, it's really important, and for many different reasons. While I'm suggesting that people need to be more open in terms of having those discussions, when it comes to the management and the direction of your financial decisions, that needs to be kept in the given relationship. And for all sorts of reasons. If somebody is very boastful, for example, if something has happened and perhaps there is some large amount of money that is coming in, or their financial circumstances have changed, that can attract a lot of people coming to the family and asking for money constantly, putting a burden on the family for money. For example, if it's another case where you have certain issues, financial issues and difficulties, it can become a very embarrassing situation. It can open your children to vulnerabilities. So we have to think very carefully about being talkative. There's no need to have a conversation about the nitty-gritty and the decisions and the choices and the realities of your financial situation outside of a given financial relationship. All right? There's absolutely no need to do that. It is a personal matter within the confines of the relationship. If there needs to be any open conversation, it needs to happen there. But I think it is very important, for obvious reason, to avoid expounding your financial realities to all and sundry. It can create some very unwelcoming situation that perhaps you would otherwise would have preferred to not have to deal with, and for obvious reasons. So the advice there is to be open among yourselves in the financial relationship, but keep your financial information and circumstances a closed matter. And if there are people that you need to get involved, you need to be able to agree on that, and it should only be to the benefit of your financial circumstances. So that is the advice I would give in that respect.
Okay, so I have another question. In both marriages and common law unions, should the man give the woman an allowance if the woman is employed or even unemployed?
All right. If in the case of employment, I think that this is a discussion that needs to be had. And usually in that case, where there is, it's a situation where two parties are employed, one person, particularly the husband, may just feel so inclined, right, to just give the wife monies, especially if it's a case where the husband in question is earning more, all right? And you see that kind of thing happen. So if it's a case where the husband is earning more, right, you may not even find that there is a need to ask or to text, that expectation tends to be there. But there are cases where that is not happening, and it may be a situation based on the financial arrangements that because the wife is earning less and because of whatever she has to commit, she may be ending up with less. So if it's not happening naturally, there should be a conversation, because at the end of the day, in a marriage, it is about unity. It is about a balanced approach. It is about equality. All right? So I think if it's in a case where one party is definitely earning more than the other, and based on the financial responsibilities, that one person is disproportionately having less money, then there has to be a conversation about how do you compensate for that. Because you can have a situation, again, what I'm trying to avoid, having one person so financially repressed into a relationship where they're totally dependent and they still can hear, no, I'm not giving you this. You don't want that kind of situation. So wherever, and that's why I'm saying have those discussions. So if you know that the husband is earning X and the wife is earning Y, and if you get into this kind of arrangement, one person is going to be having less money than the other, you need to have those discussions up front. Well, this is going to change my financial independence, and I think that if we're getting involved into this, some kind of compensation needs to be given back to me, and you need to set it up in such a way that that compensation occurs. But that is a discussion that you need to have. In the case where the wife is a housewife, that is really the expectation. If somebody is working and earning money and you have another person who is attending to everything in the house, it is natural and it is only correct and just that you provide an allowance in such a case. But then again, you can determine early on if you would even or should even expect, based on the financial practices and behavior, mentality, and cultural mindset of that person. So this is why I'm telling people, have those conversations early on. And if you're in such a relationship, it is only fair that if you are working, because you are working, You are working in the house, and that is a very difficult job that you should expect a financial compensation for that. You also have needs. There are things that you would also like to get. You would also like to, if you feel like you want to do your hair, if you feel like you want to take a trip, you need to have the ability to do that. So if you're working and laboring, cooking and cleaning, tending to the children, of course, the right thing and the fair thing and the just thing to do is for that person in question to have an allowance.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Great presentation, Sister
Thank you.
Matonia. So my question is, situations where you have couples now who are having a very difficult time because they are not able to communicate around finance.
Yeah.
They're already in the marriage, they're committed to the marriage, but for different reasons, either the wife or the husband is not opening up themselves to have the conversation around finance, and it is a problem in the relationship. What would you recommend for such, and in most instances, based on my experiences with the wife?
Right. So there are some things that are easier to get around and some things that are more difficult to get around. Because finance is such a taboo topic culturally, because there are cultural practices and cultural mindsets around how Grenadians in particular deal with finance, dare I say perhaps even Caribbean-wide, there are cultural mindsets to finance. And these things are very difficult to break, because if you are growing into a household where the mother or father or both is saying to the son or saying to the wife, this is what you do, you never, ever, ever have any joint account, or you're the man, you're supposed to be controlling everything, it's hard. These are mindsets, and it is very difficult to break. So your actions around those situations matter. Number one, you have to be patient. You have to be patient, because saying it to them or demanding it from them is not going to change anything. As a matter of fact, it might make them more aggressive. I tend to say in cases like that, again, wisdom. You have to find wise ways of helping the person to see how what they are doing is creating damaging implications for the family. That's what you need to do. So it's not about complaining and saying, oh, you need to do this, or we should do this, or this is the right thing to do. They must be able to see and witness, and trust me, the opportunities will come. When their stubbornness or their failure to make certain decisions that is going to help the household ends up affecting the household. And usually it's not until these situations occur that they begin to sit down and say, you know what, maybe you're right. Maybe I should have done this. So I'm saying walk inversely. Don't come out and say, oh, you need to do this and this has to happen and you're the reason why. No, walk inversely. Don't say too much about it. But you who are looking know fully well that a situation is going to turn up. So if one party, for example, is very vicarious with their finances, right? And house insurance is about to be due. You don't pay. You don't say anything. They don't ask. You know that you're under a very severe threat. Probably you live in an area where a landslide is likely to happen. It may not cause tremendous damage, or it may. But you decide, I am not paying that insurance, because you pay the house insurance anyway, and they don't know. Everything is great because the land tax is paid. They don't know. The house insurance is paid. They don't know. The vehicle insurance is paid. Maybe I should use a vehicle. So you don't pay the vehicle insurance and let them drive. It's not wickedness. It's helping them to understand that they need to recognize that their mindset concerning finances is going to affect everybody, including them. So let them drive, and let the police stop them, and let the police ask them for their driver's insurance, and let them feel in their back pocket and realize, I really don't have it. What are you going to do then? You get in charge. You have to go, you get in charge. Where are you going to get the money to pay? If they're very vicarious, they will have to come to you. But honey, I have this situation. That's the time you sit down and you have that discussion, because now they have seen how their behavior is implicative to the entire household, including them. So sometimes you just have to have patience, you know. If somebody is not hearing you if you're speaking, sometimes you just have to wait until their actions begin to show up. And that takes patience. It takes self-control. So in these kinds of situations where you have very difficult mindsets dealing with, where people seriously believe that they are correct, they genuinely believe that, you have to allow certain things to happen for them to realize, hey, this is not the right way. And that has worked in many cases because a lot of people have changed their financial position simply because of an experience that came to them as a result of their stubbornness, right? So quarreling and demanding, and then you might have a case where a wife, for example, might come to something like this, and she might be enlightened, but the husband refuses to come. So there is a knowledge gap, right? So you have to understand what you know, he doesn't. So you have to exercise patience and find unique ways to help them to understand. And a great way to do it is if you know you are usually taking care of important things that they don't know anything about. And then wait until the time strikes when they are being told, hey, you're breaking the law, or, you know, there's a damage to this house because you did not pay the insurance, honey. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And be very genuine. I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to pay the insurance. I thought you paid the insurance. Why it is that this has happened? The roof is off. Where are we going to get the money? You see, that is why I was talking to you about us being able to make better decisions together, because now this is happening. The entire family is exposed. What are we supposed to do? Let them feel the pressure for poor financial decisions and wanting to stick with certain mindsets that is not helping the family. Right? But sometimes we don't want to do that because it takes more time, we're not patient, and we just want to quarrel. But I mean, not all, no, a soft answer turns away wrath. You have to be wise. There's a reason why I continue to use the word wisdom. It is wisdom that's going to help you to cause somebody to graduate from a bad mindset to seeing the light. You have to know how to deal with that person, all right? So this is what I would suggest in that case.
Okay, so there's another question from online. How should you deal with a situation where a family member falls ill and you have to take care of them as they have limited finance, but they have assets? So the family member fell ill, they have limited finance, but they have assets. How do you treat with that situation?
Right, so you have to look at the condition. If it's a life-threatening disease, and you need specific finances to deal with that, you may have to consider, if it comes down to that, whether or not you need to liquidate. And by the way, church, that's the reason why you accumulate assets. You don't just accumulate assets to say, wow, I have 5 houses, or wow, I have a Bentley ride. No, you don't walk and get money to say, wow, I have $10 million in the bank. These things are value items. They are value items, and they are designed for exchange, right? That is how we need to view it. They are designed for exchange. So you may have to consider, right, disposing of a certain asset, but listen to where the trick comes in. All of the things that I've discussed in terms of the relationships and the discussions and what rights you have comes back to this, because if you have no right to that person's assets, more than likely, they might end up kicking the bucket because you can't sell. You can't sell the car because his name alone is on the car. You can't sell nothing that's in the house because you don't have the legal right to do it, especially where these assets are bearing names. You see how these things come back to haunt us? You don't know. So you say, no, I'm not going to involve no woman in nothing I'm doing. But you fall ill. And the money from the sale of the car is precisely what's going to be able to give you the surgery, because you have no insurance. I ain't trust no insurance man. So that money is what is going to come up with the $25,000 to put you under the surgery to save your life. But wifey can't sell it. It's not hers. The common law wife cannot sell it. It's not hers. So it's only until we reach in these situations, which oftentimes comes up, then we realize how important these arrangements are. Right? So having joint ownership of assets is crucial. Crucial. So for the husband or the wife who feels, oh, I own this before he come here and he's not going to have access to nothing I have, what happens when you get sick? What happens when your husband cannot do anything Because he's going into the bank or the credit union and they're telling him, I'm sorry, sir, your wife has to sign it, and the wife has a stroke and doesn't know left from right. She can't write. How are you getting the money out? How? It doesn't make sense. That's what I'm trying to explain to us. That this kind of mentality does not make sense. Now, we have to be wise in how we go about establishing the conditions through which we allow people into our financial arrangements. There are things we have to do. And I discussed that to protect one another. But you have to do it. Because if you don't do it, you're going to end up in serious problems. And so this is what I would say in that case. The question is whether or not you have access to sell. And if you do, and there is nothing else that is available, or perhaps time is against you, and you need to sell to save your husband's life, your daughter's life, do what you need to do. That is why you have the asset in the first place. It's tradable and it's valuable. And when those situations come up, you may have to make those tough decisions. That's why I told you earlier, save up and buy real gold. Because it can be pawned for situations like these. You have to think value. And you have to think about what can go wrong with you. And why it is that you need to be able to invest in value. It's for these reasons and for these circumstances. Because it's never always going to be well with you. Never. How are you planning and preparing for that? So that is what I would say to that person.
Good night, everybody.
Good evening.
Good night, Sister Matonia. Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question. For persons who are about to say, I do,
Yeah.
how do you, or what are the key factors you should look to highlight in blending your budgets? Because you would have a single budget, but now bringing it together, what should you look for?
Right. So that's a great question. That's a great question, Janelle. Blending your budgets. And it's important because it's two individuals coming together, and each of you would already have your financial arrangements, you have your financial cycles, you have your financial, just the way that you operate financially. And it's a great way for you to be able to be open about how it is that you manage your finance, what it is that you do. How much do you make and where does your money go in? And a big thing that we also need to look at, cases where there are kids or children, a husband or a man or a woman who have to take care, for example, of a mother, right? Who has a sick parent or a sick brother, and the family has always depended on them. All of these things you need to, because that person's budget may be committed to that. What happens when you get married? People get real sour there, Your responsibilities to me and our kids. Mommy can't get that $500 again. Tough questions, tough decisions. What do you do? If your mom is not working and you used to give her $500, what do you do? When you get married and you step into your financial realities, can you afford to give mommy $500 again? How does that affect what goes on with mommy? How does that affect your brother who you have been a father to? How? So the only how you can answer these questions is if you have an honest conversation, and there must be reasonability. Don't just go like a raging bull and figure, oh, well, you're my husband, so everything belongs to me. You have to have some level of compassion. I'm not saying that you have to just throw everything the way of your family, because there are families who take advantage of children. I haven't even talked about that. Culturally, parents believe that in Grenada, really and truly, that the child must stay in the house, develop the house. The child must never have a life. And so when the child is about to get married, build a downstairs and live by mommy and daddy. That's madness. It's limiting. And you cannot even properly help your parents if you do that. You can't. But you have to be able to sit and say, okay, this is my reality. Okay, I'm coming into this relationship with these financial issues or these financial responsibilities. I'm coming in with these. When we bring them together and we look at our aspirations, because what do you want to do for your family? Where do you want to take your family? How do you want to plan for your child's education? And you look at that and you say, okay, this is what we need. How does that affect what we are currently responsible for now? And now let's make a decision together about how we are going to approach this going forward. It may mean that you cannot give as much as you used to. It may mean that you may have to pause for a while based on what you're bringing to the table or what he's bringing to the table. But you have to be honest about it. But whatever you decide, you need to have that conversation. Because somebody else's life who was depending on you is now going to be affected. So you need to be honest with them and have that conversation. Mommy, daddy, I cannot do X, Y, and Z, and this is why. So that everybody is clear and understanding. Now, it doesn't mean that the person may like it. Mommy might be upset. Mommy might think, hey, where this lady come out taking my son from me and taking me $500 a month? That might very well be the result. But eventually, mommy is going to get past that, all right? But you have to be honest, respectful, and make sure that whatever you do, if there is a need existing outside of your marriage, you're supposed to try to encourage that that need is met to the extent that you can do that together. And this is where talking and being open really comes to play. All right?
Right, there's another question. What advice can be given to single parents on achieving financial freedom after a divorce and a loss of assets?
All right. So we have a classic case here where this happened. This person is literally saying after the divorce came a loss of assets. And it could very well be a case where that person would have invested more. Some very strange and unfair realities hit us. So it's good. Let me tell you, divorce is not cheap. And divorce will change your financial reality. I'm telling you this up front. It's not cheap. Some people never get divorced because they didn't even want to start to think about the legal fees. They're choosing to stay married and commit adultery, and that is a terrible thing to do. But because of the financial pinch, they don't want to do it. So what I would say to such a person, you have to sit down and you have to look at your financial circumstances. But I want to seriously advise you to meet with somebody who has the idea or have the ideas in terms of how to make sense of your financial circumstances. Because you may be sitting in your situation thinking, I have no way out. And somebody who has an eye for finance or has an eye for accounts or has an eye for certain things can say, no. But you do have these options open and this is what you can do. So I would want to suggest to that person that you find somebody who has a good financial eye, some good financial experience, and you want to sit with them and have an open discussion about what would have happened, helping them to understand what assets have you remained with. What is your current circumstances now? What are your post-divorce financial implications? And then after having those information, that person can proceed to properly advise you. So I would want to suggest that you get somebody who has an understanding as to how to spot financial opportunities and to be able to tell you what your options are in this situation. You clearly need to be able to discuss that with somebody because you will not be able to have that mind to be able to decipher all of that, especially in dealing with a divorce. The second thing I want to suggest to you, you have to lift yourself. And how do you lift yourself? You need to find ways to invest in educating yourself differently, right? Get a skill. Get a skill. Even if it is a 3-month course to do something different, find ways to create income. Because the income you have post-divorce is not going to cut it. You now have to find ways to leverage with your children. If the child is old enough, the child is in secondary school, find ways to work with your child to be able to build financial capacity between yourselves. And this is why I'm saying to you, it is important to have that discussion with somebody who can say, okay, well, this is your strength. What are you doing here? What can you do apart from what you are doing now? You may have a job, but what is your skill? And how have you been engaging that skill? There are opportunities there. But you cannot continue to live the same life post-divorce. More than likely, you're going to have to find new opportunities to create financial wellness. And that may very well be putting your skill set to work. So these are some of the advice I would give, but it is important for such a person to meet with a financial mind and to be able to have an open discussion so that advice can be given appropriately.
Okay, how do you deal with being in a marriage with a business person who is in debt and you are also in debt? How do you navigate out of your individual debt?
All right, so when it comes to dealing with debts, one of the first things you need to know, what is the status of my debt? What is my debt position? So you need to start pulling your papers together. Again, it's a team effort. Each person needs to be open. The person who is in business needs to come and sit with the wife, and they need to start discussing, this is who I owe. This is the state of the business. This is how many loans I have in how many different institutions. Go to the institutions, get printouts, bring all of the information together in terms of your debt. And now, after you've gotten those information, look at your financial earning capacity at present. Who works where and what do they have? What kinds of monies are committed to debt by whom? You need to, because you see, in this situation, the person especially who is in business needs to be very open. Because they may be in certain situations and certain agreements that you know nothing about. Everything needs to come on the table. Because in order to clean it up, you need to know how much you have existing. When you find out how much debt you have, you need to now sit down and look at your assets. What do we own? You need to spend some money to find out what is the value of what you own. And you need to compare those values. If it is that there is some level of equity that you have in your home, your vehicle, a truck, if you have a business and there are things in there that you have purchased that are asset, find the value of all of it and see whether or not your accumulated asset position is able to handle the debt together. You want to consolidate that debt at a good price. In order to get it at a good price, there are things that you have to have. The question is, do you have a solid savings? If you don't, that is going to present some difficulties. The second question, you need to find out, where can we go to get some appropriate assistance? Business loans can be treated in entities that are designed to provide financing for business loans. Have a try there. The most important thing you need to know is, what is your debt position? And how can we proceed? Sometimes, not sometimes, whenever you diversify a debt, you're going to lose big time, because each time you raise a debt, you have to pay a full amount of money. I always advise that you consolidate your debt and diversify your savings. Diversify your risk in order to gain. But debts should be consolidated as much as is possible. You need to clean up those debts, try to bring them together, and that might be a very good opportunity for both of you now to be accountable and to exercise responsibility over those debts. But I'm telling you, if you don't do it soon enough, you're going to get an eviction notice from your house, because the bank is going to tell you you've not been paying. Get real about what you owe. Get real about what you own, and begin the conversation to see how best you can bring these debt together and have a strategy and a plan to break it down. Now, that might mean that you cannot live the lifestyle that you've always been living. So what? If you have to scale back for a year or two, do it. Make those sacrifices, but you need to break those debt down and stop spending money loosely and wildly on things that have nothing to do with value. I know people who have amassed tens of thousands of dollars and they have nothing to show. No land, no vehicle, no nothing. They have eaten it and they have dressed it. That is what has happened. Or they have entertained it out. Literally, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, nothing to show. We make very bad decisions when it comes to loans and financing, and then we wonder why we don't have. And then we are the same people who come every Sunday looking for financial deliverance and breakthrough. That's not going to happen. You know why it's not going to happen? Because God expects us to be financially responsible. You cannot make decisions that is going to put you in a hole and tell God, I need deliverance. I need a financial breakthrough, only for you to do what? Take the money and go back making the same mistakes only twice times, 10 times harder? No. You have to demonstrate financial courage, financial self-control, and financial responsibility. That is the only how you're going to see your finances grow. It's not magic, and God is not going to spread his magic wand to get you to that position. You have to do the right thing in order to be able to see your financial situation improve. So discipline matters a lot. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, I have a question here. And again, thanks for the presentation, Sister Matonia. Excellent, as usual. If you have, like in a situation where you're married and you're thinking long term, and you want to, say, make a decision to either go into business with someone, but you want to keep it on the low, meaning you're thinking, okay, what if something happens later on in life, and, the wife may be thinking things are bad, and you have that in your back pocket, as it were, to pull it and say, okay, I have this here, and we could work. Would you advise that sort of venture to be quiet about it? Don't disclose it to your spouse, and keep it there, because the thing about it is a risk. So if it doesn't succeed, then there might be another problem. So what would you recommend there?
Well, I understand it all too well. I am not somebody who embellishes in the idea of risk. I've had to force myself to try to accept that risk is necessary for growth. Because as women, you see things that, quite frankly, men don't see. The men tend to see what can happen. We tend to see all the wrong stuff that could happen. But I think at the end of the day, it is absolutely important and fair for the other party who is connected to you, cannot help it, to know. Now, being truthful might mean it's going to create some unnecessary stress. Being truthful might mean there might be pressure to not go through with a venture you truly believe has potential and may in fact have potential and may in fact be the answer. But these are hard things that you have to face. And, I believe in the power of persuasion. I think far too many times we hide things and keep it secret because we believe if we say the truth, it's going to create some kind of problem and it's going to stop us. Persuade. You believe that this is going to work? Persuade me. Let me see it. Beat me down to the last until I say, okay, my hands are up in the air. I'm going to support you. But, let's see how best we can do this. I'm suggesting to us that under no circumstances should we be keeping information secret to our spouses that can ultimately create a problem. Because if you go into the venture and the worst happens, God forbid, it's going to come back to bite the wife. It's going to come back to bite the kids in the house. So we have to be honest, even though sometimes honesty means that we have to face questions we don't want to face. We have to face choices we don't have to face. We probably may have to face limitations that we don't want to face. But it is important and it is fair to be honest. And like I said, if one party is saying no, persuade. Persuade. And if it is that it's coming down to you having to say, I am going to do this with or without your support, be honest about it. It's better to say, I am doing this alone because nothing I say is getting you to side with me. So I'm telling you, I am going at this alone. You talk about it. Make sure that your decision to do this is not going to affect your current living circumstances. Or if it is, not in any implicative way. But be open and honest about whatever your decision is. So that nothing comes as a shocker and creates unnecessary stress and burden even on your relationship. So that would be my suggestion in that instant.
Okay, so we will accommodate one more question, and that will take us to the end of this segment.
Yes. All right. Well, let me thank everybody. It was very robust standing here. I did enjoy it. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for the opportunity to share this information with you. My hope is that you go with the information and challenge yourselves to be different, challenge yourselves to be better spouses, better partners, challenge yourselves to be better business people by putting into practice some of the things that I've shared with you, and I hope that is going to improve your life and the quality of your life. Have a blessed evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mistress Monroe. Indeed, this was an excellent presentation. And I think she spoke to real-life situations and examples that exist today. It was a lot of food for thought and a lot to think about. And all I would say now is let wisdom prevail. Take action now. All right? So at this point, I'm going to now call on Miss Stacia Blake to move the vote of thanks and present a token of our appreciation to Mistress Monroe.
Sister Matonia, excellent, as usual. Fantastic. You are gifted at bringing information of this type. I just want to say how much I appreciate the fact that I can see that you put research into this, that you never come up here and just talk off the top of your head. You put time, effort, research, and prayer into what you bring before the people of God. And because of that, we have tools that we can use to go away and make our lives better and more useful for the kingdom of God. Thank you so much for the time it took you to prepare for this today. And we will not let you down. Agreed? We will use what you have taught us. We will go home and we will have those tough conversations. We will work out the truth, even if it's painful, the truth about our finances, and you will be proud of the outcome. Please accept this gift on behalf of the St. George's Baptist Church. It's small, but it's our thank you to you.
Thank you.
And also this as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sister.
God bless. Thank you, honey. Thank you.
At this time, we're going to be asking Pastor Simon to come and close us out in prayer.
Give Sister Matonia a round of applause again. Really, really good. I must say, she's becoming one of the brilliant person in our church, a preacher, but also a presenter. And I really, really thank God for her and the way we've been using her. She's very, very good at what she do. I want to thank you for coming. We at the St. George's Baptist Church is grateful for the opportunity. Empowering people to enjoy prosperity and fulfillment in life is our mission as a church. So we're fulfilling that. As much as we want you to go to heaven, we want you to live peaceful, successful, and to be able to create a beautiful place for you and your family. That is what our church is about. The next presentation would be on the 6th of July. TechQ Credit Union and Guardian Group would be presenting on technology and AI from 1 to 5 p.m. here today. But for that, you must be a business and registered. You had to register to be a part of it. We only could accommodate 100 businesses. So that's it. And so it's important that you understand that. So thank you again for coming. Thank you for those of you who listen online and those of you who send in your question. Thank you so much. It has been a blessing and a joy. And as you leave, we have some refreshment upstairs for you. So don't go this way. Follow Shannon Maris, that young man in the back. Follow him. He will lead you upstairs. We have some refreshment prepared for you so you could chit-chat a little bit and meet some of the persons that you have. And stand with me as we dismiss in prayer. And if you're looking for a place to go to church tomorrow morning. Our church starts at 10:15 in the morning, and we are broadcast live both on the Maitland TV and on GBN. Father, we thank you for who you are, your love, your peace, your provision. Thank you for Sister Matonia, the presentation she shared this evening. Thank you for each of the persons that are here. The information that was shared, Lord, it enlightened us to be better husband, better wife, Lord, better financial managers. What's most important, Lord, to better our family. We pray your guidance and leadership over us as we go and what we're about to partake. Bless it, we pray. In Jesus' precious name, amen. God bless you as you go. And remember, go upstairs. Don't go this way. I want you to go upstairs. We have something prepared for you there. God bless you. Bye-bye.